Take two. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Roshi, thank you so much for all your love and tending over many years. Is anybody here for the first time? Oh, wow. Normally I would say, well, where are you from? But there are a bunch of you. So thank you so much for being here. Today's talk is A Clearing Opens, Finding Our Way Through Boundlessness. And a couple of days ago, I was driving over to the co-op, down West Alameda. I'm sure most of the residents know that route because we get our food from the co-op. And I usually get my breakfast there. And I turned around and I'm driving back West Alameda, and you stop at a big intersection with St. Francis. And usually there's somebody that is in the median, and they'll be asking for money or whatever, and they have their sign there. And this particular day, the person that had their sign, it said, literally any compass would help. Literally any compass would help. And I thought a lot about that, especially over, these last few weeks, what we've been studying. And I thought to myself, we are so fortunate. Like every one of us that's in this room right now, I'm sure there are people in the world who would probably give anything to have just a couple of the opportunities that we had that led us to be in this room tonight or online. And then we've also been super fortunate over these last number of weeks to hear about another type of compass. And that's the Prajnaparamita Sutras. And so over the last couple of weeks, Diamond and Cinco have both talked about the Diamond Sutra. And tonight we're going to do a little detour that gets us right back to the Diamond Sutra. Okay? Everybody with me? All right. Has anybody heard of the Empty Bowl Sutra? No one. Perfect. Well, so the Empty Bowl Sutra is, imagine that you have your favorite book, and book you've loved forever, and all of a sudden there's this lost chapter that you find, and it adds so much clarity and richness to this story that you already love. Well, in a sense, this is the way that I look at the Empty Bowl Sutra. It was a document that was originally translated from the Chinese, or from the Sanskrit into Chinese, right around the second half of the 2nd century. And it was called the Eighth Occasion. So the Eighth Occasion, and it became part of the Chinese Buddhist canon, this huge tome of, was 16 sutras, but 3,000 pages. And so in 2018, Red Pine, very scholarly translator, translated the Empty Bowl Sutra, translated the Eighth Occasion into English. And he's the one that named it the Empty Bowl Sutra. And so this is the copy of the Empty Bowl Sutra that he published. And so I don't know how I happened upon it, but I did. And, unfortunately, there is not a single commentary on this, unfortunately for me. And as far as I could tell, this is the only English translation of the Empty Bowl Sutra. It's the first and only. And so I think it's been largely unknown in the West. But it's really, I think you'll find it a pretty fascinating text. And what I find amazing is that the Eighth Occasion is naturally followed by the Ninth Occasion. And does anybody have any idea what the Ninth Occasion is, except for you? Kodo's raising his hand. Anybody? The Diamond Sutra. Kato got it. The Diamond Sutra. And so of the 16 sutras that are part of the Chinese Buddhist canon, we have the Eighth Occasion right next to the Ninth Occasion, the Empty Bowl Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. And these two sutras take up 12 pages of the 3,000 page Chinese Buddhist canon. And they're beautifully, intimately connected and really are like two chapters that tell the story of a single day in the Buddha's life and the Buddha's teachings. So that's what we're going to delve into today. So I just want to start off with the first paragraph in the Empty Bowl Sutra. And you're going to hear reference to the word Bhagavan, which is a Pali Sanskrit word that they use to reference the Buddha, but it means ultimate reality. So thus have I heard, once when the Bhagavan was dwelling near Sravasti in the Anapindata garden of Jeta forest and expounding the Dharma to the assembly, Manjushri, bodhisattva, put on his robe at dawn, picked up his bowl, and proceeded slowly toward the city. And then this bodhisattva named Nagrasi came up to him and asked him a question. And it's from there that the sutra unfolds and Manjushri does his teaching. Any idea what that sounds very similar to? Remember last week? No ideas? The beginning of the Diamond Sutra. Exactly. Senko read that to us, and it's almost identical to the beginning of the Empty Bowl Sutra. Except in this case, we have the Buddha who takes his empty bowl, puts on his shoes, and he actually walks into Sravasti and begins begging. And it's the same city, again, that Manjushri is walking towards. And then we know that after he spends time in the city, fills his begging bowl, he goes back to the monastery and washes his bowls, washes his feet, and then he sits with his other bodhisattvas, his disciples, and Subhuti this time asks him a question, and then the Buddha starts teaching. And what makes it so fascinating to me about these two sutras, that they really seem to work together, because you figure in the first one, you have Manjushri, he's featured, the bodhisattva of wisdom, and he's teaching about emptiness, or as Kaz and Roshi translate it, boundlessness. And you'll hear me use boundlessness and emptiness sort of interchangeably through the talk. So we're really talking about the empty nature of reality, that anything that we might actually think is real is actually illusory. And its thingness is based on nothing but our own internal concepts, our internal projections. And then we've got the Diamond Sutra, which has the Buddha. And the Buddha is taking the teachings of emptiness and combining it with the bodhisattva vow to liberate all beings. So how Buddhas become Buddhas. And I see both of these sutras sort of like an Ouroboros, the snake that eats itself, but it's also very regenerative. So it's sort of the unity of all things that are important to our journey as bodhisattvas. And when you really allow this boundlessness, this emptiness to permeate your awareness, our vows as a bodhisattva really, they co-arise with this emptiness and come of their own. And it's a continuous living by vow. There's really no effort in it. And we show up to life and to practice. And this is really what is at the heart of the Empty Bowl Sutra and the Diamond Sutra together. So I was reading in the first volume of Zen Buddhism, a history by a very famous Jesuit scholar, Hendrik, I think it's Dumoulin. And I thought something was really interesting in there. He talked about the importance of the Chinese textual traditions, like how they put together all the different sutras and how they placed them in, say, the Chinese Buddhist canon. It's very important where placement is. And that earlier, like in the earlier chapters, say like in this case, the Empty Bowl Sutra coming before the Diamond Sutra, it has some significance because the earlier teachings build on each other and lay the foundation for the teachings to come after that. So here we've got this important emptiness teaching that's flowing right into the heart of the Diamond Sutra. And Red Pine, in the introduction to this translation, he said, I stumbled upon this text while researching commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. And what struck me immediately was how it seemed to provide the missing contextual foundation for the Diamond Sutra's teachings. And so having the Empty Bowl Sutra right in front of the Diamond Sutra really seemed to make sense, especially given Manjushri's role, the traditional role that he has in Buddhist literature. As the bodhisattva of wisdom, he really appears in the sutras to elucidate particularly profound philosophical concepts like wisdom, prajna and emptiness, all of those types of things. And so we have Manjushri teaching about the empty nature of phenomena, and that creates a logical progression to the Buddha's teaching. We have right thinking gives way to right action. And you'll see in the Diamond Sutra, the right action is really the bodhisattva path. The other interesting thing that the Empty Bowl Sutra does is it really emphasizes the significance of emptiness, of this boundlessness teaching that's gone on through multiple sutras prior to it. So it's really putting the focus on the significance of emptiness and then threads it so beautifully into what the Buddha is teaching in the Diamond Sutra. And it's really how emptiness, how boundlessness lead us naturally to liberate all beings. So in a sense, we're getting the core of Mahayana Buddhism in 12 pages. So what a deal. Okay, so if we go to the beginning of the Empty Bowl Sutra, Manjushri is on the road to Sarvasti with his empty bowl, and Nagarasi walks up to him and asks him, what are you up to? What are you doing? And he tells him he's going to town to, quote, beg for food in order to uplift and benefit others, to show compassion to all beings, and to help and comfort people. And this is where Degrassi asks him this famous question, haven't you gotten over your concept of food yet? And the question leads Manjushri clearly to emptiness. And I know we have been covering emptiness sort of quite a bit, but I want to do it one more time. I really think it bears emphasizing one more time. We learn from these sutras, what we learn is very practical, it's very reachable. So remember that when you think that the ideas are just like super hard to grasp and out of your reach, because it's really an attainable ideal. So for Manjushri's teaching in the Empty Bowl Sutra, he starts off saying, the fundamental nature of all things is empty. The essential nature of all things is like that of space, ultimately empty, immutable, and devoid of anything to get rid of. The essential nature of everything is ungraspable. There is nothing to get a hold of. And that, like food in an empty bowl, things don't have the solid, permanent reality we normally would attribute to them. And I'll talk more about sort of the empty bowl and the symbolism in just a bit. So it's through Manjushri's teaching that we see that emptiness, boundlessness as a practice is really not about clinging to concepts. He says, nothing to cling to, nothing to grasp. And for Manjushri, this really is also encompassing our own need to cling to our self-referential, rigid self-identity. And so not clinging really supports us in being more fully present with everything that's before us and being more fully present with each other. And this is really the wonderful food that Manjushri talks about here, and it's the food of the Tathagatas. And if you remember at the end of the winter practice period, I was talking about Tathagatas, such an important idea. It's, one who sees and knows reality as it is. One who sees and knows reality as it is. And it's like, can we do that? I asked the question then and I ask it now. Can we see and know reality as it is? I think we can. So then I often am like, well, what's real? And there's so many examples we can think of, but I think the one that may hit home a little bit easier is um, think about the person that's sitting next to you, even if you don't know them. If you know them, it's really helpful. But think about the person next to you. Who are they, really? Are they the person they were as a child? Are they the person that they'll be tomorrow? Are they wealthy? Are they an abbot, a monk, a teacher, a social worker, a doctor, a lawyer, a pilot, an artist? Like, fill in the blanks. Um, we freeze people into these sort of roles, these frozen identities. And then we like to put people in boxes. And there's nothing wrong with this, but we do this to we put people in boxes for maybe their wealth, their accomplishments, their career, whatever it may be. And then we also are really masters at projecting. Like, I'll give you an example. Like a couple months ago, I read 2 biographies of residents that were coming in. And once the residents got here, I was watching, you're always watching new people when they come in. And I was creating this narrative thinking about this biography of this one resident. And, you watch them in the Zendo, you watch how they interact with people in the over dinner or wherever it may be. And you create these stories. I haven't even talked to this person. And then all of a sudden, I realized I got the wrong bio for that person. So here I've projected all of this onto someone, and it's completely wrong. We also think of, like, we call people our friends, right? We might have, well, this person's my enemy, or this person is my partner. And all of these relationships evolve. Certainly somebody that you know today in one particular way, you may know them differently tomorrow. And this happens a lot in my work, obviously, dealing with people going through divorce. There was once deep love, and now maybe a person is a stranger or maybe an enemy. Think about some of the people that you've disliked greatly who may later become a trusted friend. So just be open to the fact that things may change. And it's also okay, we naturally sort of do all of this categorizing and putting people in boxes. I mean, it's natural. It's sort of how we safely navigate the world. We're always sort of evaluating, like, where are we? But suffering can really come from all of this, from the clinging to our notions of who we are, our notions of who, our friend is, how we want relationships to be, because we're fluid people and we change over time. And I think it's the boundlessness teachings, the emptiness teachings that really sort of reveal that we are not fixed, but we're fluid and we're flowing and we're not separate, but we're super interconnected. And then think of what's going on in our country. A few weeks ago, I was watching the president talk with the Joint House. Did a lot of people see that? No? Okay, well, that's probably good. So I was watching it, but I was very aware of how, like, this side of the house was up and screaming, and this side of the house was down and very calm. And the next day, I was like watching or listening some of the commentary on the internet, and I just thought, like, wow. I mean, the political identities we have right now are so hardened. I'm liberal, I'm conservative, I'm whatever it may be. and treating these sort of as inherent aspects of ourself rather than really a collection of views that arise from conditions, conditions that evolve and change and sometimes devolve. And I think if you can really see this, you can also understand how this type of way of looking at things, how it affects how we engage issues and how we engage each other. I love how Norman Fisher really encourages us to let go of conditioned views and look at ourselves and others with this mind of emptiness that we're talking about. And in doing that, he says that it allows spaciousness that allows for transformation. Spaciousness that allows for transformation. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like if we basically addressed all of our political issues, or really everything in our lives, with spaciousness like that that allows for transformation? I mean, it'd be amazing. We could create communities of belonging that are really based not on everybody being the same, but on the rich diversity of our society. And, maybe it would also help us overcome some uncertainties that we have and some of the fighting that we have that's going on today. So keep asking questions. What makes this real? And if I strip away all of my projections, whatever it may be, what's left? Okay, so I want to talk briefly about the symbolism of the empty bowl. So a number of years ago, several of us that are in the room right now, we were in Kathmandu, and we were waiting to go to the Dolpo region of Nepal, where we were going to participate in Nomad's Clinic and take medical care into the mountains. And during those days in Kathmandu, I would do what I would normally do every morning. I'd go down to the Buddhanath Stupa, and it's this massive stupa. I mean, it's like a quarter of a mile to get all the way around it. And it's in the middle of chaos. Like Kathmandu, like it's just full of activity. So every day I would go down there and I would circumambulate the stupa, and I'd always pass by this monk, maroon-robed monk, standing there holding his bowl, his empty bowl, sort of looking down very serenely, bowl just in front of him, sort of as we are in Shashu. And he was so calm in all of that chaos of Kathmandu. Do you remember that, Roshi? Oh, you do. Okay. So I've thought about that monk, with his empty bowl, particularly, I mean, a lot the last 3 weeks. And then I've thought about like all of the monks and nuns that throughout history have carried their bowls into the cities. And I thought about Manjushri and the Buddha carrying their empty bowls into Stravasti to beg for alms. And I thought, wow, they've really created this ancient practice that's it's at the heart of what it is to like be on this path. And then today we have this maroon-robed monk with his empty bowl, holding it there like we hold our empty bowls in Sesshin. And I think about that empty bowl, like us waiting in Sesshin to have the empty bowl filled. You think of how many times you've been there leaning over with your bowl. And I can't help but think that in light of that empty bowl, that it's really sort of a metaphor for our own emptiness, for our own spaciousness, our own boundlessness, our own receptivity. In Zen mind, beginner's mind, Suzuki Roshi says, if your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything. It is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So Just as the empty bowl can receive everything and anything, our empty mind remains open to the moment, and it too can receive everything without any sort of preconception. And in a sense, the empty bowl is really anything but empty, because emptiness is an absence. It's really this boundless potential. And as the Heart Sutra says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So the empty bowl, in a sense, is also a paradox. In its formlessness, it contains all possibilities. And this is sort of what Wendy was talking about, Diamond was talking about a couple weeks ago in the spin cycle of logic. So when Manjushri speaks of nothing to cling to and nothing to grasp, we're really invited to understand that our true nourishment comes from releasing our grip on all of our conceptual thinking. Roshi's teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, he also sort of elaborates on this paradox. He tells us that emptiness doesn't mean non-existence. It means interdependent co-arising impermanence and non-self. So the empty bowl really can remind us that everything we receive, food, knowledge, relationships, all of that arises through interdependence. Nothing stands alone. Everything sort of flows through us like an open vessel. And this is us. So when Nagrasi asks Manjushri, have you gotten rid of your conception of food yet? It really challenges us to examine all of our conceptions, all of our notions of what we think is right. Roshi says, in emptiness practice, we're cultivating the capacity to let go of our fixed ideas about ourselves and reality. So the empty bowl is really this lived reality that we can touch with our hands. And, it reminds us that emptiness isn't some abstract theory. It's really sort of, it's like the ground of our own existence, the ground of others' existence, and our coexistence with each other. Okay. So let's go to the ending of the Empty Bowl Sutra. And just to catch you up where we are in the story of the sutra, Manjushri never did make it in Sravasti. He was spending most of his time talking to Nagrasi and speaking about emptiness. So he eventually goes back to the monastery, cleans his feet, and he joins the other bodhisattvas that are listening to the Buddha. So that's where we are. The Bhagavan then spoke this verse. As a star, a cataract, a spark, or illusion, a dewdrop, a bubble, a dream, a cloud, or lightning, all things that are conditioned, view them like this. Does that sound familiar? Why? Exactly. It's the end of the Diamond Sutra as well. So let's go to the Diamond Sutra. I'm going to back up a few lines, but here's the Buddha talking here as well. And how should they explain it? By not explaining it. Thus should they explain it. As a lamp, a cataract, a shooting star, an illusion, a dewdrop, a bubble, a dream, a cloud, a flash of lightning, view all things like this. These four verses in both sutras are like, they call them the famous four verses. Like they're hugely famous. And these are the words that Wenang heard and was instantly awakened. And I think it's not so much the words and the power in the words, like the poetry of the words. These words are really instructions. They're like telling us how to see reality as it is. And I really love the lightning. Um, the lightning it's just this super flash. It disappears, like vanishes quickly and leaves no trace at all. And think of what goes on in our lives. The same sort of thing happens routinely, especially if you're open to looking at it. Think of like some of our most amazing experiences and our intense experiences. Love, grief, hatred, some of our failures, passions, like all of this arises and then falls away, passes away the same way, like this flash of lightning. I don't remember who it was that said this, but joys and sorrows are time bound. They cannot last. Thank you. I didn't hear that, but yeah, joys and sorrows are time bound. They don't last. And this is the Buddha's teaching on impermanence. So if you look deeply at any one of our experiences, or thoughts, or sensations, or relationships, you can see the fleeting nature of things. Now, I don't say this to really discount like all of the beauty of our life. It's really, because this happens all the time, and some of it is such richness and so rewarding. All I'm saying in doing this is think about taking a step back just for a second and questioning and really thinking, like, why are we doing what we are doing? And so these sutras and the famous 16 words in these 4 lines, I mean, we have both sutras emphasizing wanting us to meditate on the words. View all conditioned things like this. All of these fleeting things, the flash of light, the way the star blinks, all of those things are just impermanent and emptiness. That's what they're representing. So they're both of the endings of these sutras are really teaching us the significance, the deep significance of really looking at the true nature of things, knowing reality as it is, like the Tathagatas, and waking up to the moment. And like I was saying a little bit before, when you really let boundlessness work on you, it co-arises. It comes of its own, and there's no effort. It's this continuous living by vow. This is spaciousness that allows for transformation. And this is our compass. It's our compass. So what does all of this mean for us today? When I read the Prajnaparamita Sutras, when I think about the Empty Bowl Sutra and the Diamond Sutra, I can't help but think that there's this part of all of us, this organic part of all of us that really wants to grow. We really want to just deepen our understanding of who we are, of who others are, grow in consciousness and awareness to know ourselves better, to know the moment better. And it's this ongoing questioning that I'm suggesting that we should do. Keep asking the questions regarding all the things that come up in our experiences. Our beliefs, our attitudes, how we engage ourselves, how we engage others, and really work at cultivating a mind that sees clearly. And I'm sure that, tonight, tomorrow, at some point, we're really going to have an encounter, an internal encounter with ourselves that's based on an external event. And we'll encounter ourselves. We're going to meet people, friends, family, whoever it'll be, and we're going to see them in their deep humanness with all of their limitations, their own angers, their own projections, like all of these different ways that we are with one another that may not be as skillful as we would like. And it's like, how are you going to respond to that? How are you going to show up to see clearly, to see with some sense of spaciousness? And this is really transformational. I think of the jewel mirror, practice invisibly, work intimately. So in a sense, this is like the internal and the external, practicing, working intimately with others. And a lot of times we'll do this in hindsight. Hindsight is 2020. But how do we catch ourselves? Norman Fisher says that when you notice yourself caught in reactivity, take a backward step from your thoughts and feelings, not to escape them, but to see them clearly without being entangled. And I always think about, you are your thoughts. And there's that line, change your thoughts, change your life. So keep asking the questions. And when you are able to take that backward step for just a moment and respond differently, you can really feel it. It opens you up. I think this is the tenderness that Kodo was talking about a few weeks ago. I mean, we know it when we feel it. And I think we perceive that we handle difficult situations with a little more grace. We handle setbacks a little better. We have more confidence in ourselves, confidence that isn't so reliant on external feedback that tells us we're okay. We make more decisions out of wisdom rather than fear. And we find more joy in just simple moments. And better yet, we laugh, we can play, and we treat people better. This is our practice. Roshi once said, being awake is love. Being awake is love. That's what it is. It's certainly not hate. It's certainly not fear. But what it is, it's a sense of being not separate from all the suffering and all the emptiness, all the compassion, all of the wisdom, all of the liberation, all of the enslavement, and to understand we're all that. So I've got just a couple minutes. So I want to close with a poem that I wrote that may express boundlessness and emptiness, really born out of this inquiry into the empty bowl. And it's called The Clearing. Between headlines and heartbeats, a clearing opens, while a world spins loud and unrelenting, suffering still singing an unbroken song. And in one deep breath, what we grasp as stone crumbles to sand through open fingers. What we name mountain softens, slipping away with the winter thaw. We stand like an oak with palms upturned, like unfurled ferns catching rainfall, chest exposed to a meadow of wildflower and thistle, thoughts expanding like mist over the ground. As first light breaks over the ridge and fog dissolves against tall pines, each appearing in its flawless moment, neither arriving nor departing. All of this is not separate from tending wounds, washing dishes, marching in streets, or sitting in silence. We discover the path stepping stone by stone across turbulent waters, each foot placed precisely where water churns hardest around a rock. We move through thorned thickets without turning back or cutting down. How eagle and field mouse share the same land, or how frost cracks stone and makes soil. Something opens, not in searching or grasping, but in the stillness between breath in and breath out. When a hummingbird hovers fiercely without a sound before dipping into the flower's center, finding its own perfect clearing.